All right. Good morning or good day, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our Torah class this morning. We're here in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm Rabbi Daniel, Beth Israel JMI. This is our Hebrew Torah Institute class. And today we're going to be talking just a little bit about the area of leadership with wisdom. This world there's a vacuum in true wisdom. There's human wisdom, and then there's heavenly wisdom. I think the world misses out just by implementing just the wisdom that man knows. But without the wisdom of God, we really fall quite short. We're going to be getting close to Hanukkah at the end of our year here, and Hanukkah is such an important area. I'm going to connect Hanukkah with wisdom, especially wisdom with leadership. The question this morning would be, how did the Maccabees win against such great odds? I mean, there was formidable forces. They fought the Syrian Greek armies, and they won. How could that be, And we can say that God was on their side, yeah. Of course, God is always on our side. But, God will only fight our battles when we cannot fight them ourselves. And what I see here is that God not necessarily stepped in to fight for them, but that, yes, God was on their side just as much as He is on our side. But we can also say that they defeated their enemies because of wisdom. And we all know the story. The triumphant Maccabees having captured Jerusalem and then they rededicated the temple. They set their sights on one priority, and that was the lighting of what? The menorah, the one that we have on my right side here. The 9-candle branch menorah. And they found one flask of oil, and the flame, which should have lasted one day, actually lasted for how many? 8 days. So for 2,000 years, since the Jews around the world have commemorated this particular day, they have commemorated by lighting a Hanukkah menorah, and we Hanukkah. So what's so special then about this menorah, or the menorah that was in the temple? Because this menorah of 9 branches is actually the menorah of 7, but they added one more. So that's the menorah in the temple, but added one more. I think again that the Maccabees made it their priority that the menorah must be lit. We also must learn to make it a priority that we are a light. And we're a light on a hill for all to see. That little song that maybe you learn in Sunday school, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm going to let it shine. It's that they made it a priority, and the sages made it the prime focus of our Hanukkah celebration. So without the menorah, even though they won, this is the prime celebration, is to light at the menorah, the Hanukkah. The Torah describes the menorah in the temple as 7 branches, like the one we have over here on my left side in the back. And with decorative cups and knobs and flowers, and all fashioned from a single piece of gold. That's the way that Yahweh or God told Moses. You fashion the menorah from one lump or one single piece of gold. But then the Torah adds an interesting detail. When you light the menorah, be sure that the 6 outer face the center. That's found in Exodus 25, 31 through 37. Take some time later on to read that. Interesting that God put there that the other 6 must be leaning towards facing the center one. So what do those 6 outer lamps represent? And why must they all face the 7th center one? Mm-hmm. Well, we know as being Messianic Jews that center one represents Yeshua, the Messiah. And Yeshua is the Torah, is the Word. Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. So we know that center one was Yeshua, the Messiah. The menorah's 6 outer branches represent the six menorahs, or 6 branches, in accordance to Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 to 3. They represent the 7 spirits of God that rest upon Yeshua, his son. But a branch will emerge from the trunk of Yeshai, that's Jesse, the son of David. A shoot will grow from its root. So the menorah is kind of representative of a tree with branches. But a branch will emerge from the trunk of Yeshai. A shoot will grow from his roots. So, Brother Eugene, would you bring that menorah and put it over here, a little center, front and center, since we're discussing this menorah, so we can kind of emphasize it. Just bring it forward. Now, the Spirit of Yahweh shall rest upon him, and the Spirit of Chokmah. Now, here are the 7 spirits of God. One, it is that the Lord says that the Spirit of God is going to rest upon him. The Spirit of Chokmah means the Spirit of wisdom. So the center one, which is the one that's right in the middle, has the Spirit of Chokmah, wisdom. All right? So when we look at the other menorah over there, the tallest one in the middle, that's the Spirit of wisdom. And we posed an important question, and that is, how were the Maccabees able to defeat such overwhelming odds? And that is that they were infused with the Spirit of wisdom. It was through wisdom. How you can't win against such overwhelming odds without the wisdom of God. And so it's the Spirit of wisdom, and Binah is understanding. The Spirit of Atzah, which is the Spirit of counsel. The Spirit of Kevura, which is Spirit of might. And the Spirit of Da'at. Da'at is the Spirit of knowledge. These are and then one more. And of Yirah. Yirah is the spirit of the fear of God, the fear of the Lord. And all of these are what we need as leaders with wisdom. Because it starts out with Chokmah, the wisdom of God. And it really speaks about us today, that we each need to have in our lives operating each one of those spirits of the Lord. So these 6 spirits of God are focused and directed towards the center stem. In other words, we cannot operate in wisdom without focusing on the Torah, Yeshua the Messiah. We cannot even exercise understanding or even have the mind and the counsel of the Lord without God's Torah, without His Word, without Yeshua the Messiah. We cannot exercise any ability of power or might without Yeshua. Or we cannot even use our knowledge or fear of the Lord without Yeshua the Messiah. So all of these six, again, they're focused and directed towards the center stem and symbolizing, of course, Yeshua, the Torah, and spirituality. So there's also knowledge here, and I want to just make a point here that knowledge without wisdom is destructive. So do we have a lot of highly educated people in Washington? Yeah, I think we do. I mean, they're attorneys, they're lawyers, they're judges. You could be in the Supreme Court and have a knowledge. You better have a lot of knowledge. I mean, you're grilled before you put there, right? But why is it that these people way up in the Supreme Court pass laws to kill the unborn child? With all of that knowledge, and let me mention once again, that knowledge without wisdom is destructive. So you can have all the knowledge of the world, smart people. You could be an Einstein, but without wisdom, I mean, you're messing everything up. Greece was a mighty empire. The Greeks promoted beautiful fashion. They had great fine dinings and great music, the arts, vigorous athletes and captivating entertainment. Man, they had everything going. Besides all of that, all of Greece was a beehive of similarities, stimulating activities. Many different similarly stimulating things that they were doing. What a culture, huh? But the Greeks were the most advanced. They were the most advanced in their day, but they were most advanced and sophisticated of their time. Keep that word in mind, sophistication, or they were sophisticated of their time. But why didn't the Greek Empire survive more than just a few hundred years? If they were so sophisticated, if they were like the greatest culture on earth ever, with the latest fashions, the latest of everything, why would they not survive more than a couple hundred years? And the reason is because there was a sophisticated immorality. They were a sophisticated immorality society, immoral society. I want you to know that many countries, even here in the United States of America, perhaps the most powerful and richest country in the world, we are also sophisticated, but we have immoral values. Why can't Hollywood turn out movies that are not so disgusting? Is that the word? Mind poisoning? I mean, we have such immorality in our country that we sell it to the rest of the world. So in some great sense, knowledge without wisdom is destructive. Historians also concur that they were destroyed by moral decay. Moral decay is a result of knowledge without wisdom. This is why we, the people of God, must have the wisdom of God as knowledge increases, as you begin to learn more. In our day, we are learning more than our fathers ever even imagined was possible to know. They had to go through volumes of books to just find one or two things that they wanted to talk about. We could bypass all of that with the sophisticated internet system that we have today. We can learn so much more. But as we're learning more, let us not forget that we need the wisdom of God. We really do. Knowledge without God is a recipe for disaster. I think you should even maybe underline or write that down. Knowledge without God is a recipe for disaster. And since 1962, we've been removing God from as much as we can, haven't we? Even as a nation, from books, from talking about it. You know, high school students cannot pray. Football players are now being forbidden to bow down and do hand things like they're praying to God. Well, what's going on here? Because again, knowledge without God is a recipe for disaster. We simply cannot and will not survive without a clear moral direction. I think a very clear example of sophisticated immoral or immorality is Nazi Germany. Germany was known for its leading academic institutions, advancement in their arts. Hitler had such sophisticated plans for 1,000 years of whatever he called it, with a Volkswagen in every garage. The latest ovens, the latest of everything. Germany was known for everything, arts, and also an impeccable social conduct, etiquette, all of that. So where did all this lead them? It was at the Wannsee. It was the Wannsee conference, and I looked this up. It was, I think, 13 or 14 top Nazis that got together for only 90 minutes. They got together at the Wannsee conference, the special meeting that was held to formulate the final solution. Wow, such sophisticated people with the latest and the finest of everything. And the greatest of their minds are getting together to talk about the final solution for the extermination of all Jews, planet of this earth. And 9 out of those 13 were actually PhDs. So they were, they were smart people without the wisdom of God. And these were the most creative, scientific minds in the entire civilized world at that time, at least in that part of the world. And yet they used their power for what? Ultimate evil. Wow. Folks, we need wisdom, but not this kind of human wisdom alone. We need the wisdom of God. We cannot even afford to stray a little bit from the wisdoms of the Lord. Through wisdom, we obtain everything that we can possibly obtain. This is why we talked a little bit about the menorah, and this is why all of the other giftings that God would give us have to lean towards what? The center, towards the Torah, towards Yeshua the Messiah. Because we'll use knowledge wrongly. We'll use intelligence wrongly. We will even use fear wrongly. We'll fear man more than we fear God. Morality actually holds civilizations together. That's why we must be a morally sound people. Its absence leads to chaos. And no matter how intelligent those in leadership may be, it's going to lead to a final kind of solution. Now, the beauty of Judaism, especially Messianic Judaism, is that we are constantly, and I would like for you to put this down, because gauging ourselves, it must become a priority today. We are constantly able to gauge our actions against the backdrop of Torah. We're going to use knowledge. It's got to be against the background of Torah. Understanding, Torah. That's why, remember, the other 6 are leaning where? Towards Torah. The background for every action that we are going to take is based on Torah, because the Torah, that's the wisdom that we really need. We cleave from it. The wisdom as we lean towards God, towards Yeshua, who is Torah. Torah is our moral compass, in other words. It is our life's objective, our standard. It gives us direction and is a hedge for us against becoming extremist. Too far to the left, or maybe way too far to the right. You become an extremist. It's just like in the New Covenant, it speaks about those that were, what's the name? Okay, it'll come in a minute. So Torah and knowledge working together produce divine wisdom. That's what it is. The knowledge we need, absolutely. We need to strive to the highest level possible to understand everything. And I want you to know that you may not be getting all kinds of big degrees with big graduations, but promotion is coming from the Lord. And as you advance in your knowledge of God's Word, and you're gauging your actions against the Torah, that is when you become graduated by God. He promotes you because you're leaning in that direction. And when you're leaning towards the Torah, towards the Lord, in knowledge, He'll give you even greater knowledge. He'll give you even greater understanding. When God sees that we have built a hedge against becoming an extremist in our own thinking, that's when He promotes us and gives us even more of everything that we need, so that all of the 6 spirits of God are working and operating through us. Now, it is also through Torah that humanity is guided by a watchful man's laws prescribing. Now, I want you to get this one right. It is through Torah that man or humanity is guided. We are being guided to be watchful of what? Of anyone, of man's own laws. There's laws that are being passed that are taking away your freedom, right? When you have the Torah and the wisdoms of God, we are watchful of what's going on so we don't fall into the entrapment of certain laws that they're passing, prescribing perhaps even exploitation, exploiting us. What about laws that might exploit our children? You know, I became very concerned years ago when the A+ program came. Because the A+ program came at a very kind of invitation. Listen, you're going to have more time for yourself, but give us your children. But they didn't say give us your children. They'll say after school program we have an A+, so that we already have them for 6 hours. But listen, how about if you give it to them for us to have them for 10 hours? See, that's part of the exploitation. That if we only see, oh, I have more time, the kids are in school, we do not even realize that we were exploited. So I want to reiterate this part, that it is through Torah and the 6 spirits of the Lord, that humanity, us, we are guided to be very careful and watchful of man's prescribing exploitation, workaholism. How many people do you know that go to work for 8 hours, but they push you to stay 2 more hours extra at no pay? That's exploitation and making you to become a workaholic. And what about pollution? To pollute our minds, pollute the minds of our children, and other abuses of self and society. And this is why we need all of the 6 leaning towards the 7th one. All of the spirits of God operating in us so that we can be a watchman on a hill, right? Torah and knowledge work together, producing divine wisdom in us. God commanded that the menorah be fashioned from a single brick of gold. Why? Because all wisdom works together in creating a holy and peaceful world. The light of Torah is symbolized by the menorah in the temple, right? Okay, so we have the light in the menorah, or the menorahs in the temple. And the Talmud notes that the windows on the temple actually were of a very unusual construction, the windows. They were not like this to let light in, but they were constructed, usually the windows were built wider on the inside wall, wider, and then as the windows went out, because the walls were thicker, they became actually what? Wider on the inside wall and narrower on the outside wall in order to bathe more light into the interior. So at the temple, well, there's no temple there, but you know, there was a temple there one time. I'll go into another part here now. Now that you have an understanding of, at least fairly good understanding about the 7 spirits of God and the way the 6 of those operate in our lives, now we're in a position to implement that. But I would first start out by saying, who taught the world moral ethics? If not the Jewish people. Certainly it was not Sparta with all of their knowledge, and even not Athens, and not the Romans, and not the Persians. And what if you would stop a warrior, if you were living in those days, you stop a warrior on his way to rob and to rape and to murder, and you asked him on what philosophical basis he is permitted to attack? His answer would most likely be might and power. And this is the way the world works today. Might and power. And that could translate even to the power of the world. I think it was Ronald Reagan. What is the saying about might and power? Anyone? Well, power corrupts absolutely, no. But you stay in power because you are powerful, right? Say it real loud. Peace through strength. Okay. So what good is it to have peace through strength if you're a dictator? You're going to control and manipulate the people. That was Hitler's philosophy. He said, I'm going to bring priests to this entire world through strength, but first I need to wipe out all the Jews. I wonder if he was afraid of the wisdom that was coming forth from the Jews, because the Jews were the ones that helped raise Germany to the power and status that Germany had. In fact, almost every single nation the Jews have gone into, they've been asked to leave because those nations were advanced by the Jewish people. The wisdom that the Jewish people have is phenomenal. It's amazing. So this is why they would say, I'm permitted to do this because might makes right. And the ones who taught the world the ways of God were the Jews. Not the Spartans, not the Athens, not the Romans, not the pagans. And our Torah and prophets gave the world, and especially the Western world, the ways of God, which are one. The world did not have this until God brought it through his people. What? Love your neighbor as yourself. That came through the Jewish people. What about proclaim liberty throughout the land? You know where that's found? It's found on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia. And it comes from Leviticus chapter 25:10. The world gave America, proclaimed liberty through the land. Also, all men are created equal. That came from the Jews. And it is written in the Constitution of the United States. They will beat their swords into plowshares, Isaiah. And that is found adjacent to the United Nations building. These are things that the Jews gave the world that stands for immemorial, forever. As long as the nation stands, the things that the Jews gave the people because they learned it from God, because they understood the importance of leading through wisdom. Morals and ethics was taught by God to the Jewish people and has become the Jewish legacy. Morality and ethics. And that is the reason why we do not, during Hanukkah, of course, it was won through what? Through the Maccabees that won a decisive battle against their enemies in battle. And so why don't the Jews have big parades during Hanukkah? Parades that have to do with military. Why? Because the legacy of the Jewish people is more moral and ethics. Of course, we regard also King David with great respect, and not because he was a warrior, but in spite of the fact that he was a warrior, we regard him. He could not build the temple even though he desired, because his hands were filled with blood. And this even though he fought only at the command of God. His son Solomon, the man of Shalom, was fitted to build the temple. Okay, so interestingly that David never fought a battle unless the Lord told him to fight it. And this is where we need to have wisdom. Because there's going to be many battles that we're going to have to fight. And some of these battles are battles of righteousness. And these battles can also be battles of that God is assigning us to do. But in the end, if we fight too many battles, we might have too much blood in our hands. And we have to know when to say, God, you know, I need to move on to something else. And I think this gives us insight as to whom God will use in a great way. In our day, it will be a people of who built the temple? A man that's called what? Shalom. Solomon means shalom, peace. So the ones that God is actually going to use are those that have peace, not those that have fought a lot for the Lord. Although those are needed as well. But God said, I think what God was saying, David, you are a man after my own heart, and you defeated the enemies, and I commanded you to do all these battles, and you won them all, but you have too much blood in your hands. The Midrash, the Parsha, Bechalo Secha, it quotes God telling Aaron, the high priest, lighting the menorah will be your eternal contribution. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, and then let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That is our eternal contribution, to continue to let this light in us shine and keep on shining. But for them, it was an eternal contribution to the Jewish people. The commentators ask, lighting the menorah was done only while the temple was standing. So what does it mean for us today? That lighting the menorah, it means today that lighting the menorah is eternal. I think one of the things that we have in our newsletter, how about the one that handed out? What does it say there underneath the heading, way on top? Igniting? Does it say something about igniting the world through the power of prayer? No. Well, one of the printings that we put out is igniting the world through the power of God's Torah. Another one is igniting the world through the power of prayer. So we need to ignite God's Torah in us. Really. The truth is that the truth that we glean from Torah, the center one, that truth is eternal in us. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but His word in you will never pass away. It's eternal. Wherever you go, the word of God goes. As long as we live, we are the light for all to see. An open book for everyone to read. That open book should be Torah. Everyone's reading you just by looking at you, and they're going to say, I want something that she has, something that he has. And I'll close with Proverbs 6:23. As King Solomon said, mitzvahs are the candle, and Torah is the light. This is the meaning of the menorah. And this is our message to the world, I think especially when Hanukkah comes around. In a nutshell, the menorah represents wisdom, all right? The menorah represents us people with the wisdom of God. And together, we bring the wisdoms of God to the world. All right, I'll take any questions that you might have. Someone? And as you're thinking about your questions, I'm going to really thank those that were listening and watching through live stream today. Thank you for tuning in. This is Hebrew Torah Institute here in Honolulu, Hawaii. We look forward every week to being here with you and you joining us as well. We'll be here next. We're also coming live on our prayer night from 7 to 8 o'clock. So you can join us for an hour prayer. Hawaii time, 7 o'clock. And if you have any special prayer requests, please let us know between now and then. We're praying also for the victims that are still living from that tragic hurricane in the Bahamas. And we're sending special words of encouragement to our director, Dr. Kevin King. Please keep the Bahamas in prayer. On September 11th, we begin to pray especially for Panama. So we'll send you that information if you could connect with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Shalom, shalom.